There she is.
Called it, Bill. What's that? I said, you called it. But she'd stroll in. 1 minute.
Yep, here she is. We'll be ready to start the meeting in 1 minute.
Wood chipper 35 years. I don't know right now.
No problem.
They all got a kick out of it.
Good morning.
Thank you for taking care of us last time. Sorry, we had a Sabino.
I'm not as good as you, by
No.
but we got through.
Hello. How are you? Good morning. This is not you. This is not Chris, should we go ahead and start, or should we wait for Director Walsh?
As we're at this junction, but you get down to brass tacks, it's still the same thing.
Bill? Larry? Is your meeting gonna be over? Ready? You guys ready?
Yeah.
We're just having We call the meeting to order. Please raise for the.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Abbott?
Present.
Commissioner Morris?
Present.
Commissioner Brule?
Present.
Commissioner Gordon?
Present.
Commissioner Walker?
Here.
Commissioner Beller? Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
Commissioner Meal? Chairman Arzami?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, could you have the announcements, please?
Anyone who has not signed in, please do so at the table located in the lobby. Should anyone wish to speak, please complete a request to speak form, which is also located on the lobby table next to the sign-in sheet. A request to speak form must be completed for each item you would like to speak on. Please note, there are stairs on the right, left, and center aisles, and we ask that you use caution when using the stairs. There is also a ramp located to the audience's left. If anyone has written comments, exhibits, petitions, photos, or letters they intend to present at today's meeting, have 17 copies and give them to a staff member at the back of the auditorium. Staff member, please hold up your hand for the audience. If you do not have 17 copies, you may use the overhead camera to present your documents. Please place your documents on the podium and line it up with the arrows indicated. If you want your documentation to go on record, you must hand them to the clerk after your presentation with the agenda item number clearly marked on the documentation. Members of the public cannot speak to staff members that are seated at the tables with microphones during the meeting. If you have questions, please see the staff member located in the back of the auditorium. All speakers will be limited to 2 minutes to make their presentation statements. Everyone, please turn off all cell phones or place them on vibrate during the meeting. If you must take a call, please leave the meeting area and go outside to have your conversation. We also ask the audience to refrain from talking with one another during the presentations and discussions. Today, the Planning and Zoning Commission will hear public testimony and then forward a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Everyone attending the meeting is asked to remember that the administrative building and campus are tobacco-free areas, which means no smoking is allowed from curb to curb. No food or drinks are allowed in the auditorium except for bottled water. If there are any items remaining on the agenda, the commission will break for lunch for 1 hour per the chairman's discretion.
The items with the recommendation made by the commission will be heard by the Board of Supervisors on Tuesday, November 6, 2018, at 9:30 a.m. in the same location here, with the exception of any continued items. Could we have a motion to review or approve minutes of the September 12th meeting?
I'll make that motion to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Walker. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Gordon. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. First of all, I'd like to apologize for missing the meeting last time. For the first time in my life, I was subpoenaed to testify on behalf of Mojave County, and I didn't know how powerful subpoenas are. I was trying to postpone the court meeting, and they said I better read it, and it was some severe consequences if I wouldn't go there. So it was a short notice, and again, I apologize for not being here. And again, I want to thank Commissioner Burrell to help us out and chair the meeting for us. Thank you. The other thing that we have is we have Ms. Gordon and we have Mr. Gordon Jr. here observing and evaluating our performance. So the commissioners, we need to all behave. We appreciate you coming over, and we welcome you. Item 1.
Item number 1 is an evaluation of a request for an extension of time for BOS Resolution number 2016-111, setting forth a rezone to an M2 general manufacturing zone to allow for a water storage and wastewater treatment plant in the Beaver Dam vicinity. This rezone was conditionally approved to establish a water storage and wastewater treatment plant by the Mojave County Board of Supervisors on September 6, 2016 via BOS Resolution number 2016-111. 3 letters of opposition were received when the item was first heard. The surrounding property owners that sent in the letters were in opposition to the potential odor and decreased property value. The extension of time will allow the applicant additional time to complete a site plan and establish the use as required by BOS Resolution number 2016-111, as noted in the application received August 13, 2018. The applicant anticipates satisfying all outstanding conditions by September 6, 2020. The applicant states that the reason for the delay is because the project was placed on hold in order to make appropriate modifications to the project design. This will be the first extension of time for this property. Staff recommends approval with the following conditions. 1, that compliance with the conditions of BOS Resolution number 2016-111, and also that this extension of time will be in effect until November 5th, 2020.
Thank you. We're going to finish item number 1, and then I'm going to call for the call to the public. I missed that part. On item 1, do we have any speakers, applicants here? Do we have an applicant? Do you want to talk, sir?
Unless there's questions.
Okay, is there any question for the applicant by the commission? If not, any discussion? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Walker and a second by Commissioner Kelly. Yes. Any discussion? None? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Call to the public right now if anybody wants to speak on a non-agenda item. Okay, we'll close that. Director Walsh, on my list, I didn't have it, but I know that you would like to have an executive session. Do you want to do it now or later?
Chairman Nazami, this is on item 5, so we could either address it at that point prior to taking out item 5, or we could do it now.
At the
It's at the commission's discretion.
What the commission wants to do? Do you want to do the executive session now or just before item 5?
Let's do it at item 5.
Item 5? Okay, we'll just wait until item 5 then. Item 2.
Item 2A is an evaluation of a request for an amendment to the Mojave County General Plan from an LDR low-density residential land use designation to a GC general commercial land use designation, and an amendment to the Virgin River Communities Area Plan from an LDR low-density residential land use designation to a GC general commercial land use designation in the scenic vicinity. This item is requested by Todd Leavitt, representing KT Legacy LLC of Mesquite, Nevada. The applicant is seeking to amend the Mojave County General Plan and the Virgin River Communities Area Plan designations to allow for an equipment and construction material storage. We have received one letter of concern on the item. Staff recommends denial of the proposed amendment for the following reason. The neighboring area does not contain other approved designations or uses similar to the above proposed action. If the commission decides to approve the item, then the standard conditions directing staff to change the maps would apply.
Thank you. We don't have anybody signed up for it. Do we have the applicant here? Would you like to address the commission? And I'm positively sure you have read the, the comments by the staff, right?
Sure.
Please.
Thank you.
State your name, your address for the record.
Todd Levitt, Mesquite, Nevada. I own the property. I'd like to have a rezone, and the one reason, I don't want to get too long here, 2 minutes, but I do store some of my personal stuff out there, and I've started getting letters, that I was in violation, and for some reason I figured I needed a fence from the letters to begin with, and at the time I didn't have the funding to put the fence in, and so I got ready to put...
The system has detected that this conference has a minimum number of participants and will attempt to close this conference. If you wish to remain in conference, please press any key now.
I apologize that. Go ahead.
So, anyway, I went to get a permit to put a block wall up, and then they said, I'm in zoning deal, and they said, well, you can't get the permit until zoning, you got to get the zoning. So, anyway, I'd like to get it rezoned to put a wall around it. That's the first I'd heard about anybody complaining about it. I know I've had some complaints. I hauled some boulders out there, and I was giving them away, and then when I stopped giving away, I started getting complaints. It states that it's a spot zoning, and I did rezone a section in Mesquite, and I had to send out 300 notices. It was around residential, and I I didn't get any complaints on that. I put it in, it's done well, actually going. People like it because it's close. Have a couple other photos of a couple others in St. George and around that show storage in residential, if you wish to look at them. Can't find, there's one. Let's see here.
Are those in Mojave County? You said in St. George?
No, that one's in St. George, Utah. This is the one kind of shows you that's in Mesquite that I did, and people like it because it's close by.
Okay, let me explain to you. Each community has its own ordinance, and we have to follow the land use ordinance that is approved by the Board of Supervisors for the Mojave County. And item number 1 of the staff recommendation states that, your project of having a general commercial is not consistent. And if you look at the general map of the area, you'll see a lot of residential surrounding your project. So that's where, the recommendation for denial came from, that your project, not that you have a problem with the fence or, any of that, it is inconsistent with the neighboring properties. So that's where the problem is.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
may I ask the applicant a question?
sure, please.
When I'm looking at the pictures, I noticed that lot appears to be used for storage. Is that what you were saying? That the
Yes.
lot is used for storage? How long have you used it this way?
2 years. I'm going on phase 2, and I had to go through zoning on it. And I'm very familiar. I know why it's, to answer the chairman, I know why I'm here. And I know everybody has different rules, but I guess what I'm pointing out is that they have the same rule, and I had to get it rezoned also, and it was spot zoning. And I know here I send out like 8 letters, there I send out like 300. And, and then I come back a year and a half later and purchased the land next to me and rezoned it also, and so it didn't seem like it bothered anyone. I realize that Mojave County is different than Utah or Nevada, both, and anyway, that's, any other questions?
Do you have any other question?
I have one.
Sure.
The equipment you're storing here, is this for a project going on right in the area, or is this just a general storage?
No, it's just general storage. I have some corrals there, and I've stored some equipment there. I would like to point out, since you brought that up, that, I've lived there, I'm not very old, but I've lived there long enough to know when there was no one out there. I've traveled that road when it was a cow trail. And I remember when my neighbor, who was the first one out there, and, I'm sure you have pictures of that too. I mean, they have storage, and when I purchased it, there was already a lot of storage there. Anybody that lives out there, period, moved out there when there was already people storing stuff there. And I just want to put a fence around it and clean it up. I don't care if I get the zone changed, but I'd like to use it for storage, and I'd like to put a fence around it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, I'll open up. We don't have anybody else signed up. Open it up to the discussion with the commission. It is obvious from the, the GIS map that, it is inconsistent with the neighboring, because there are a lot of residential around that. And basically, our commission has to follow the land use ordinance to make their recommendation to the Board of Supervisors for their final approval. So, do we have a motion?
Mr. Commissioner, I have one more question for you. So am I correct that in order to get the commercial zoning, you have to build a fence? Is that what the...
Well, that is a secondary item. The first item is the land use.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, I mean, if they go to the commercial manufacturing or things like that, that would be something that, it comes as part of.
Later.
Right. It has nothing to do with it. Thank you.
If I may speak for just a moment, I actually put in to get a permit to build a fence.
Right.
And then the permit was denied because I had to get it rezoned.
That's the next step.
Yeah.
That's the next step. The first step is the zoning. Thank you.
Can I ask a question of staff? I guess, in this zoning district, is there, on private property zoned in this manner, what can be stored or not be stored? Like, I'm looking at the properties adjacent, and the one to the south appears to have a whole bunch of cars stored on it. Where is the line there that requires it to be commercial storage versus personal storage?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gordon, you're exactly correct. There are several properties in the vicinity that have similar storage, but it's this one that we have a violation on, and our department is driven by complaint basis. And so we've been, they've received a violation. They're trying to correct their violation by creating a commercial entity there. Parcels that are 5 acres or 3 acres or greater, 3 to 5 acres can store up to 2,000 square feet of personal storage. If it is for commercial use at all, then it wouldn't be allowed. It'd have to be associated with a commercial zone. But they're allowed to store up to 2,000 square feet of personal storage for their own property. It would have to be properly screened. But this one's in violation with us currently, and they're trying to correct that violation.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's clear, obviously, the intended use of the storage is commercial related, so I appreciate that.
And there's a big difference between commercial manufacturing and residential.
I have a question.
Please.
For staff. When was this property originally zoned for what it is now?
I think the current zoning is the AR, and I believe that was put there when the county did the countywide zoning.
Is there a possibility when it was originally zoned that, because it was all vacant land, there was nobody living out there, it was just thrown at it and said, okay, somewhere down the line we can change all this zoning?
Not that I'm aware of. It was originally zoned for residential, and it's been that way for the entire time.
Okay.
It's part of the area plan. Okay, any other questions? Okay.
I have a question for staff. If we deny this, recommend denying it, what does the application have the right to come back to? Is there a way he can come back to you and fix these things and bring it back before us?
So the applicant can still correct his violation by removing some of the storage on his property and not using it for commercial use. He can reduce the amount of storage to 2,000 square feet and have it screened properly, and then he would be in compliance with our ordinance.
Thank you.
The property is embedded into a residential area, and the application before us is commercial manufacturing. So by doing that, we are deviating because it's inconsistent with the land use ordinance. So that's where the problem is. And the staff, under two recommendations that they have, they're correct based on the land use ordinance. So with that, please.
I have a question for staff.
Sure.
You had mentioned other residents out there are storing their own private stuff. Is it within the 2,000 square foot limit?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Emil, I personally couldn't tell you that. If the applicant wanted to submit a complaint to our code enforcement, we'd be happy to go look at it and see if those other properties are in compliance or not as well.
Why haven't they been tagged yet?
We haven't received a complaint on them, and then they might have a complaint on them too. I would have to check our records to see who in that vicinity has a zoning complaint or a zoning violation. The applicant today has a zoning complaint, and he's trying to fix his, and that's why he's come before you today for a rezone. I would have to go and check the other properties around if they have violations, and if they're trying to remedy the situation themselves.
Commissioner Mill, in Mojave County, it is, because it's so large, Mojave County basically goes by the code enforcement, and say complaint, driven.
Everything is a code enforcement, is a
Complaint driven, yeah.
driven.
Right. So for that reason, if someone complains about it, then, the code enforcement goes out there and then they investigate and, they tag it as you suggested. But again, the issue, I believe, before the commission is not the violation of the neighboring properties, it's basically the zoning. And as I said, we have to follow the land use ordinance.
I have a motion.
Go ahead.
Let's put this on hold until staff does their due diligence for that area. There is no where I'm coming from, there is no reason to say no to the applicant when you've got others that are not doing a thing.
Okay, but, that would be fine. You have the right to make your motion, but I'm saying that, that is a code enforcement issue. It is not a zoning issue.
Well, then get code enforcement on the ball.
Yeah, well, so that's what I'm saying. That is not, I believe, that item on the agenda. But if you want to, you have a motion on that. I don't know if anybody's going to support.
I'll second that motion, but can we clarify what it is? Can you clarify your motion? Your motion is to postpone this item until
Yes.
they look at the entire area to make sure that the code is fairly applied to everyone who's there, or that we're looking at the bigger picture with all properties in that area? I mean, can you be clearer? Because I want to support you, but I don't know exactly what you're saying.
That's no problem. As per staff's own code of the 2,000 square feet,
Okay, could you state your motion one more time?
that let's put this on hold until staff and/or code enforcement make sure the adjoining properties in that area are within the 2,000 square foot boundaries.
Okay, did you hear that? Is that what your intention is?
No. No, I'm sorry. I have to withdraw.
Okay. So, Commissioner Burrow, withdraw the second. Do we have a second? Hearing none, motion dies on the floor. Okay. Do we have another motion?
Commissioner, I'll make a motion. I think unfortunately, I understand the concern, and the applicant's probably been there a long time using it in this manner, but with residents in an area now, and clearly the intent is to use it as commercial storage, I don't see the support from staff or from the commission to place a rezone that would allow commercial-type storage in this area at this time. So I would have to, at this point, I'd like to make a motion to deny based on staff recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a motion by Commissioner Gordon and a second by Commissioner Morse. Do you have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? We have one nay. Did you record that? Okay. Item 2B.
I have a question for the chairman.
Yes, sir.
You're setting a double standard by doing this. In that, my opinion, it's okay for all the neighbors to put their treasures out in the backyard and not be fenced and just ignore county regs. But you're going to penalize him for trying to do his job properly.
Commissioner Mill, as I stated before, there are apples and oranges.
I understand what
I
you're
mean,
saying.
what I'm saying is that, we are addressing the item on the agenda, which is a zoning issue. The violation that they have as a code enforcement, that is a different application, a different department that they have, and it is not into our agenda right now. Director Walsh, could you shed some lights on that?
Chairman Azarmi, thank you. Basically, as you stated, that's correct. And I definitely understand Commissioner Mills' frustration with this, and it's a frustration we share as well. But the issue that we have with code enforcement is we only have so much funding to staff it with so many people, and with that staffing, we address our violations as they come in via complaints. So as we receive a complaint, we go out, we investigate that complaint, and if it's found to be in violation, we'll issue that violation. As we receive those complaints, we'll address each of them. The problem with going after an entire area and doing an area-wide compliance is, one, we don't have the staff to be able to do that. And definitely, I understand your point of a double standard. That's not the intent. Basically, what we try and do is, as those complaints come in, we'll go after that complaint and investigate, see if it actually is a violation, and if it is, then we'll try and work with the property owner to bring it into compliance. In this case, one option that was attempted was to look at it as basically rezoning the property to allow for the use that was it's currently being used for. Unfortunately, in exploring that option is not compliant with the adjacent properties. It would be introducing a commercial use into a residential area. So that's what we brought before the commission. Is the property owner is proposing to rezone the property in order to bring his use into compliance. However, that zone would not be compliant with the surrounding zonings. With regards to the neighboring parcels or any other parcels that may be in violation, if we do receive a complaint on those, we will investigate, and if there's an issue, we will follow the same track with them as well.
I have a question for the applicant.
Sure.
Is there a possibility you could, where you could fit all your stuff into a 2,000 that square foot area?
No.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't want to turn my neighbors in, but I mean, you could write a lot of, whatever.
I understand where you're coming from too.
Yep. Okay. Item 2B.
Item 2B is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor parcel number 402-25070 from an AR agricultural residential zone to a CMO commercial manufacturing open lot storage zone to allow for equipment and construction material storage in the scenic vicinity. Staff recommends denial for the proposed rezone for the following reason. The proposed rezone to CMO would be considered spot zoning with no other commercial zoning in the vicinity.
Thank you. It's the same item, same issue. Applicant, would you like to address the commission? Please. State your name and your address, please.
Todd Levitt, Mesquite, Nevada. I think this is probably the same as the first one, but I just like to, I'm just wanting to clean my place up, and I realize why it's in violation and that you have zoning, but as far as spot zoning, I just really don't see where storage, it doesn't seem to, it seems to blend in with residential pretty well.
Commercial manufacturing, it's a
if we don't have, I keep hearing what you're saying, but why do we even come to the meeting if what you're telling me is that this is your policy and you're sticking to it? That's basically what you're saying. That's what I'm getting from you, Mr. Chairman. You're saying, why do we even have a commission if we don't look at things and try to reason around them? But I'm just not seeing any reason why this couldn't be, I could you know, I can show you some more pictures of what I've done, but you've kind of seen them, and I think it'd look, I mean, it would probably make the rest of the neighbors look bad, I mean, for miles. Anyway, I didn't mean to say that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, you have any other discussion? If not, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to deny per staff recommendation based on the predicament we're in. I think that's the proper thing.
Okay, we have a motion to deny by Commissioner Abbott. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a second by Commissioner Gordon. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
Did you record that? Okay. Item 3.
Item number 3 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor parcel number 402-64080 from an RE10A residential recreation 10-acre minimum lot size zone to an RE1A residential recreation 1-acre minimum lot size zone to bring the property into compliance in the Beaver Dam vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Okay, do we have you have nobody signed up for it. Do we have the applicant here?
Kathy?
Would you like to address the commission? Okay, does the commission have any question from the applicant? Hearing none, I enter the motion.
I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendations.
We have a motion by Commissioner Walker and a second by Commissioner Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Item 4.
Item 4A is an evaluation of a request for an amendment to the Mojave County General Plan from a GC, General Commercial Land Use Designation, to an SDA, Suburban Development Area Land Use Designation, and an amendment to the Virgin River Communities Area Plan from a GC, General Commercial Land Use Designation, to an SDA, Suburban Development Area Land Use Designation for assessor's parcel number 402-15009 in the scenic vicinity of Mojave County. This item is requested by Darrell C. Houston of Mesquite, Nevada. The property is approximately 10 acres in size, and the applicant is seeking to amend the Mojave County General Plan and the Virgin River Communities Area Plan designations for the parcel to allow for a minor land division for single-family residences. We have received one letter in favor of the item, as well as one letter opposing the item. And just to clarify one thing, in the letter opposing, they state that they believe they represent 50% of the property owners within the 300 feet. Staff has investigated that, and we found that they represent roughly 9% of the land and 18% of the owners, which is less than the 20% cutoff to require a 4/5 vote. So that is not the case. Staff recommends approval of the proposed amendment.
Thank you. We don't have anybody signed up for this item. Do we have the applicant here? And the applicant is not here. I open it up to the commission for discussion or motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Walker and a second by Commissioner Gordon. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. At this time, we're going to take a short break for the, 4B, I'm sorry. Let's say that one. Thank you. Item 4B.
Item 4B is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 402-15009 from an RE10A residential recreation 10-acre minimum lot size zone to an AR agricultural residential zone and an AR5A agricultural residential 5-acre minimum lot size zone to allow for a minor land division in the scenic vicinity. The applicant's looking to rezone the northern 5 acres of the property into 4 parcels that will be zoned AR, which will have a 1-acre minimum lot size, And then the southern 5 acres will be rezoned to the AR5A with the 5-acre minimum lot size. We've received the same letter of opposition and approval letter. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Thank you. Same item, nobody has signed up for 4B, and the applicant is not here. Any discussion by the commission? If not, we enter a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Okay, we have a first by Commissioner Walker and a second by Commissioner Gordon. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Now we're going to go to the executive
Mr.
session.
Chairman, I would move that we adjourn to executive session.
Okay, we have a motion to go to the executive session. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second, Commissioner Brew and Commissioner Walker. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Ready? Okay, we open the meeting again. Item number 5.
Item number 5 is a re-evaluation of a request for a special use permit for assessor's parcel number 402-32173 to allow for an off-premise sign in a C2H commercial highway zone in the Beaver Dam vicinity. This item was heard at the August 8th, 2018 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and then at the September 4th, 2018 Board of Supervisors meeting. The Board of Supervisors referred the item back to the Planning and Zoning Commission because of new information regarding the property became available. A building permit for an off-premise sign has been issued for the property southwest of this property in the same location as the existing off-premise sign. The permit is conditionally approved and requires the existing sign to be taken down prior to the new sign being constructed. The building permit will expire in 6 months if construction on the new sign has not commenced. We've received 2 letters from the applicant with additional information, and we've received 3 letters of opposition. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you. We have 2 people sign up for it. Mr. Paul Newbold. Please. State your name and your address for the
John
record, please.
Cayanello.
Has joined the conference.
Thank you. I'm Paul Newbold, representing Insight Advertising from South Jordan, Utah. I'm assuming everybody was able to read about the situation, but just by way of quick review, we acquired a 30-year lease on the property in 1994. We applied for and received all the permits necessary at that time, including a resolution that was granted to Insight Advertising for a billboard on that property where it currently sits. We made timely payments for the past 24 years to all of the landowners that are there, issued the proper 1099s, et cetera, performed on the lease for the past 24 years. The new landowner came aboard and is asking us to move the sign. It doesn't want to have this sign on his property. doesn't want to have a lease, doesn't want to recognize the lease, so rather than have a contentious relationship there, we have applied to move the sign as per their request off of their property. So that's why the reason we applied for the SUP on the neighboring property. And then, of course, in the BOS meeting after you approved it in August, the BOS meeting, this permit came out of nowhere. So that was the reason for our complaint. We just reviewed the county ordinances, et cetera, and lined them up with the permit. We requested information from the planning zoning about that permit that was issued in error, we believe. So we are requesting that permit to be revoked, and so that we can move forward with our business. We're just requesting basically to be able to continue our business the way we have for the past 24 years, and it's moving it from one legal location to another, and to be able to continue. And the reason for our complaints, obviously, if they want to get into the sign business, it's their prerogative, but they should follow all the same ordinances and rules that we go through to acquire a sign permit. They shouldn't be allowed to just take my permits that were issued to me in 1994, utilize them to get a building permit. They should be required to go through an SUP, same as me, what I'm doing now. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just asking for them to have to go through the same procedures I have to go through, to do business here. And that's it.
Okay, do we have a question from the speaker? Any questions? Thank you, sir. Second speaker is Mr. Rick Anderson.
Rick Anderson, 820 Chaparral, Mesquite, Nevada.
Thank you.
I start with one document being the lease, which we believe was a 10-year lease that was not exercised by us, was not recorded on the property in any circumstance, wasn't recorded on this first transaction when it left the original leaser, and was never conveyed to us when we bought the property either. The only lease that exists is what he's calling this 1994, and it clearly has no 30-year term in it. The best we can come up with from our legal counsel is max 10 years. We've asked him to remove the sign multiple times. He fails to remove the sign. You hear that they're talking about our permit expires in 6 months. We believe it's his intention to drag us along for 6 months until the lease does expire. We're not someone not doing business. We represent DS Communities, which is in the process of doing a RV storage. We own the storage units there. We're building an RV park. We're working to improve the water system. We're working to put a sewer system in there. We're also broke ground and are in the middle of framing on a pilot gas station in the community. We're also putting a subway in there and multiple other things. We're not trying to get into the sign business. We're trying to use our right on the freeway access to advertise the products in which we're using on the site, which is pretty much all of the things I've just mentioned to you. So we don't really have any intent. The reason we got a permit is because we applied for it and we filled out all the proper paperwork and we submitted all the proper plans in which to get that permit, and we were issued that permit in all the right reasons. That's our beliefs, and I appreciate your time.
Is there any question from the applicant? Could we have the staff, maybe Mr. Taylor, shed some light about the overall thing?
Chairman Zami, you have
Regarding the permits, because Mr. Newbold mentioned that, the permit that was applied for came out of nowhere all of a sudden? Is there any fact into that?
Chairman Nizami, from what I understand, the permit application process for the building permit for the present sign location it did take a while to get through the process. Everything was complied with in the application process, and it was issued, I believe, in September of this year. I think it was applied for.
So it was properly followed the procedure of the application and all that, correct?
From what I understand, it did take there was quite a bit of amount of time from the time that it was applied for until it was actually issued, and a lot of that had to do with the applicants' payment of the fees and picking up the permit and everything like that. So, there is an issue as to the amount of time that it took to issue the permit, but a lot of that could be the explanation for that. Could really set with the applicant.
Thank you. Director Walsh, can you add anything to that, please?
Chairman Nizami, looking at the history on that, just specifically to the building permit for the construction of the new sign in the existing place, the initial permit was submitted on October 17, 2017. The staff reviewed that application, prepared a letter noting some deficiencies in that submission. That letter was sent to the applicant on October 19th of 2017. On April 3rd, the applicant resubmitted, and the sign was approved by Building Division. So April 3rd of 2018, that was approved. Then on August 31st of this year, the application was paid for by the applicant, and on September 11th, it was issued. So basically, there were a couple of delays in there on that building application, but those were all at basically where either the applicant was making corrections to those plans, or after it had been approved prior to the applicant picking up the permit. Specifically to this, on that permit, just a couple of items of note. And I believe Matt mentioned it, but there was a couple of conditions placed on that building permit as well. The new sign is not to be constructed until the existing sign is removed. The new sign is to be placed in the exact spot of the previous sign was placed, and the sign's not to exceed the 672 square feet as allowed by the zoning ordinance, and is not to be higher than 45 feet above the road grade of I-15. Just that's the history of the building permit for the sign to be constructed in the existing sign's location at this point. This application, or this item that's before you, is whether or not to grant a special use permit for the adjacent parcel, which would allow future construction of a sign on that parcel. Just a point of clarification, zoning use permits and special use permits, once they're granted, they're not granted to an applicant, or the applicant applies for them and they're either approved or denied, but the permit goes with the land. The entitlement of that special use permit goes with the land. It's not held by the applicant anymore. It applies to that specific parcel. So just to point that out.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Please.
The permit goes with the property. So, for instance, in this particular case, if the sign is removed and there's a permit for a new sign, that special use permit would be utilized. What I'm trying to say is, what if the sign is 10 times bigger or whatever, placed 10 feet to the north or south of where it was? This use permit is general enough to cover those kinds of changes, or it has to be exactly the same sign with the exact same placement as far as size and height and whatnot?
Chairman Azarmi, Commissioner Brull.
Thank you.
It will depend on the special use permit that was granted at the time and any conditions that were placed when that special use permit or zoning use permit was approved at the time. So if conditions were placed that this zoning use permit is approved for this specific location, for this specific sign, then that would be correct. However, if a zoning use permit were approved allowing a billboard to be built on this property, then it would allow a little bit more flexibility. So it would depend on the initial approval by the board and the conditions imposed there.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the permit with the 7 conditions that staff outlined.
Yeah, if I may, that would be fine. We have that motion. If I may have the staff read the recommendation, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Newbold to, if he wants to make another statement because of the complexity of it, and then on Mr. Anderson.
Just to clarify, Chairman, you want to read just that we recommend approval?
Staff
or
recommendation, yeah, for
the
approval.
conditions that apply as well, or
Yes.
just the recommendation?
Yes, the recommendation with the conditions.
Staff recommends approval for the proposed special use permit subject to the following. This special use permit is for an off-premise sign in a C2H general commercial highway frontage zone. The applicant shall comply with all applicable provisions of the Mojave County zoning ordinance. A 500-foot separation must be maintained between off-premise signs facing the same traffic flow. The applicant shall obtain the proper Arizona Department of Transportation permit and approval prior to erecting this sign and meet the proper spacing and distance requirements. The appropriate permits will be obtained prior to construction. If construction or the use has not commenced within 1 year of the Board of Supervisors' approval of this special use permit, or if the use has been discontinued for 6 months, then approval shall terminate at that date. And this special use permit is subject to revocation upon 60 days notification by the Board of Supervisors if, in the opinion of the Commission and the Board, the continued uses of the property would be contrary to the public health, safety, and welfare.
Mr. Newbold, would you like to, you raise your hand, so if you want to make a statement. State your name and the address, please.
Paul Newbold, South Jordan, Utah. It just seems strange to me that they wouldn't have to go through the same process that I have to go through to obtain a use permit. You know, a lot has changed on that property in the last 24 years. We were the first thing built on that property. There's other uses now on the property, you know, storage units, et cetera, and setbacks and different lines could have changed in the past 24 years, you know, for them to basically copy my plans and permits from 1994 and submit them and receive a building permit. I just would think that they would need to go through the same process as me to get a sign permit on the, you know what I'm saying, on the property, to get that use. The use has changed on the property in that amount of time. And I'm required to get an SUP on the neighboring property to do business. Shouldn't they have the same requirements as me? Is my question, I guess. Can anybody enlighten me on that, or?
They already have an SUP, the original one that you had on the sign.
But my point is, when my sign comes down, everything's changed. It's a new day. I mean, there's new uses on the property. They should have to go through the same process. And that was, I mean, if I read the resolution from 1994, at the meeting of the Mojave County Board of Supervisors, October 4, 1994, a public hearing conducted to determine whether approval should be granted for a zoning use permit for the property here above, granted to Insight Advertising of Salt Lake City, Utah, at that time. How can they just go grab that permit and say, oh, that's ours? You know, does that make sense?
Because it stays with the property.
Am I confused on that? Is that?
Yeah, staff is going to make, Director Walsh.
I mean,
Okay. Chairman Azarmi, to address the question that a special use permit, a rezone, any type of entitlement that is applied for and granted by the Board of Supervisors stays with the property. It's granted towards that property. So this property was approved through a special use, through a zoning use permit to allow a sign on that property. That approval stays with the property, and in many cases, that makes that property more valuable. It's a portion of, it becomes a portion of that property, which when ownership is transferred, that entitlement transfers with that property.
Can you, it was granted to property with a parcel number of ending in 068 in 1994. The parcel number is now 088, I believe. What's the difference in the parcel numbers? Has the use changed in that time, 25 years ago?
Chairman Nazarmi, the change of the parcel number would not affect the entitlements granted.
Why
to
did
that
the
property.
parcel number change?
Excuse me, Director Welch and Mr. Newbold, the item that we have on our agenda is not, that's something that you need to address with the staff later on to review if there is any discrepancy there.
Does that make sense, though?
Well, you heard Mr. Anderson, you heard the staff and the recommendation. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I was requesting today, I don't know if it's within your power to revoke that building permit.
No, we are an advisory board. We are going to make recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. They're the one that they make the ultimate decision. So you do have that opportunity to present your case, and after you talk to the staff and get your findings, to be able to present that to the Board of Supervisors on November 6th.
So, all right, so we're going to...
Thank you.
Again, we approved this in August. We're going to approve it again today, and then again, back to the board? Is that how that works?
Correct. On November 6th.
On November 6th. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson?
Ricky Anderson, 840 Chaparral, Mesquite, Nevada. I guess I wanted to bring some clarity to it, is the fact that apparently some people don't understand when your lease expires, you don't get to take the permits or the personal property that's on the property that was leased to you for a period of time. In that situation, whatever benefits happen from that day forward are truly in the rights of the property owner. So I just wanted to clarify that. The other thing is the lease is expired. It has been expired. We've had multiple attorneys look at it. And the third thing is this whole thing, and the reason why the permits took us so long is because we were trying to negotiate with Paul, and we've not ever been able to get any common ground on anything. That's why the permits were applied for, then stalled because he's pretending like he's negotiating with us, then stops, then starts again. And that's the problem I have with this whole process, is because if he's granted a conditional use permit, which doesn't work there because he can't make the 500 feet regulation, what's his intent of getting it other than to just stonewall both us and everybody else involved here? So that's where my heartburn comes in, is this is just truly a ploy to stall. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Okay, we heard from all the different parties, and we have a motion by Commissioner Broke to approve per staff recommendation. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Walker. Any discussion? All in favor? So go ahead.
For staff, is there a possibility on that second lot to have it surveyed as part of the conditions? So you actually know where the boundaries are and not going off of county records.
Chairman Azarmi, Commissioner Mill, as part of the application for a building permit to construct a new sign, a plot plan would be required. So with this approval, if this item's approved and the board also approves it, the applicant would need to then submit a building permit in order to construct a new sign. The permit for that new sign would include a plot plan showing the parcel boundaries and where that sign would be located.
Okay, where are they gonna get the plot plan from? Are they gonna pull it off off of county records, or are they actually going to get surveyed? That's my point.
And that would be, that would be at their discretion. We would allow them to use a county GIS in order to show the property and show those dimensions in order to show the placement.
Okay, we already have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Thank you. What's the next item?
John Cayanello.
Has left the conference.
Next item.
Item number 6 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 337-20001 from an AR 36A agricultural residential 36-acre minimum lot size zone to an AR 6A agricultural residential 6-acre minimum lot size zone to allow for a minor land division in the White Hills vicinity. The applicant is seeking to create 5 parcels from this rezone. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Okay, we have nobody signed up for it. Do we have the applicant here? Would you like to address the commission? Okay, any questions from the applicant? Here none. Commission, have any discussion on this item? If not, entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Second motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Walker and a second by Commissioner Abbott. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, motion carries. Next.
Item number 7 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 310-19016 from an AD Airport Development Zone to an MSD Manufacturing Special Development Zone to allow for a solid waste transfer station, 10-day transfer facility, and to allow for the storage of hazardous materials in the Kingman vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Okay, we don't do we have the applicant here? You want to address the commission?
Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, and nobody has signed up for it. Any question for the applicant? Okay, any discussion on item 7? I entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion to approve for staff recommendation.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Abbott and a second by Commissioner Morse. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Next item. He's from my area, I have to be prejudiced.
Item number 8 is an evaluation of amendment to the Mojave County zoning ordinance, section 42, sign ordinance, to allow changes to be made to regulate signs by time, manner, and place. On June 18th, 2015, a court case between the town of Gilbert and Reed demonstrated that a sign ordinance could not regulate signs based on the content of the sign. In order to be compliant with the court ruling, the department has updated the Mojave County sign ordinance to regulate signs solely by time, manner, and place. The department also found errors within the sign ordinance that have been corrected along with this update. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the town of Gilbert versus Reed court case that happened a few years ago, but everybody's kind of been updating their sign ordinances to be in compliance with the ruling that the court issued. A lot of the changes that were made within the sign ordinance kind of remove the necessity to look at the sign to regulate it. For example, if it says real estate sign, we had specific regulations for those signs. And so we tried to remove those out and kind of create more of a general type of regulation for signs that are under 6 square feet and signs that are above 6 square feet. And if you've had time to look through it, you can kind of see some of those changes. We also tried to simplify it a little bit more so that it's not as specific on things that we are prohibiting or exempting, but it's more kind of general. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. It's not necessarily that we need to make a decision today on this, but if there's other suggestions that you have on the sign ordinance, would be happy to entertain those and answer any questions that you might have as well.
Scott, these changes that you're talking about, it's not just referring to the court case. It is basically, you've done it seems like you have done a comprehensive review of the sign ordinance, right?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. We looked through the whole sign ordinance and saw a few errors as well that we needed to correct, but kind of looked through the whole thing and saw how we could maybe update it and make it a little bit easier to understand, read, or and also be in compliance with the court case.
Yeah, because this, I know that, that was part of the land use ordinance that was reviewed not long ago, right?
When you guys did the update in 2015, yes.
Are you blaming it on us? Okay. Any questions, any discussion? There is no motion on this thing, so it's basically for review, right?
It could be for just review. If you would like to make a motion and a second, then that's also possible. But if you wanted time to review it a little bit more, or it's not like we're trying to push it through today, but if you wanted time to review it or had some suggestions, then we would also entertain those. Or if you feel that you've gone through it and it looks good, then you can also make a decision and we can move on to the board.
Well, to be honest with you, with the other amount of material on the other item number 5, I did not spend any time on this sign. And I know it was both signs, but I mean, so if you want to table it for the next meeting, then is that okay with the commission? I guess everybody is in concurrence with that. So do we need to make a motion to table it for 30 days then? Okay, so I guess we need to do that.
I'll make a motion to table for 30 days.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to table it for 30 days by Commissioner Abbott, second by Commissioner Walker. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Any other item? Roll call to vote was the beginning. Okay, call to the public. Do we have any call to the public? A non-agenda item? Okay. Any, Director Walsh, do we have anything? Any commissioners, do we have any? If not, can I make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.